Donald Trump is about to arrive in the UK for a second state visit by royal invitation.
Can I present a letter from the King to
Thank you very much.
I think he loves being treated as an equal with any monarch, let alone the King of England.
The UK likes to think it has a special relationship with America, stretching back decades.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain.
But how special is it? Donald Trump is a president who always puts his own country first.
From this day forward, America first. America first.
And he's not afraid to tell others how to run theirs.
The one that's toughest and most competent on immigration is going to win the election.
I personally welcome President Trump to come over here and sort this country out.
So, is it in the UK's interest to roll out the red carpet for Donald Trump?
Special relationship is being tested like never before.
Can Keir Starmer trust Donald Trump?
No. I don't think trust is the basis for the relationship.
Should President Trump get the Nobel Peace Prize?
Oh, look, I can't answer that.
This summer, Donald Trump arrived in Scotland to play golf, he said. But with the world's press in tow, everybody knew there was another game in town.
Good morning. Yeah, we're from the press, from the BBC.
Press from the BBC, have you just got clearance to come through?
Donald Trump divides opinion wherever he goes.
President Trump is here. How does the town feel?
It's a bit of a pain in the neck that he's here, to be honest. And we went to go down to Asda and stuff, and we got turned back.
I used to drive him when he used to come to Turnberry years ago, and he was just not a nice person. He'll do what he'll do, and that's all that's about it.
I've supported him since day one.
I love Trump. I support everything he does. Scotland loves Trump.
Yeah, he loves us, we love him.
Hot on the president's heels, Sir Keir Starmer headed to Scotland too. He's invested a lot of personal and political capital in getting closer to Donald Trump than many thought possible.
I love this country. My mother was born in, as you know, my mother was born in Scotland.
When Donald Trump's in town, it seems the Prime Minister has to do a lot of listening, even when some of what he's hearing is questionable.
Stopped 6 wars in the last, I'm averaging about a war a month.
You are sometimes a guest in your own country if you entertain Donald Trump. That's true. That's true. I mean, you live in Trump world. Donald Trump, who likes to come and give lectures. It is that thing about, I am the president of the United States. We're more important than you.
If you shoot a bald eagle in the United States, they put you in jail for 5 years. And yet windmills knock out hundreds of them.
Anne McElvoy is a seasoned Trump watcher. She travelled with him on his last election campaign.
For Keir Starmer, I thought it was really interesting dynamic.
I assume when we do our trade deal overall, a lot of it comes to Scotland, I hope. Maybe all of it should go to
It's a very good deal for the whole United Kingdom. We're already achieved great things under the deal.
With others, I think Keir Starmer comes forward, he's got his chest out, he wants to be at the lectern, absolute parity. When he's with Donald Trump, you can see he'll try to get in, he'll try to butt in.
I think he's done a terrible job. The mayor of London, a nasty person. I think he's done. I think
he's a friend of mine, actually.
No, I think he's done a terrible job.
Some people will watch it and think, oh, that's a cringe, that's my prime minister. But, you know, I think he has decided he has a relationship. He sees it as tactics like you would do in sport.
I'll invite you to a football ground at some stage.
A lot of people come back when they've spent the day around Donald Trump, and if they're prone to it, have a large gin and tonic. I mean, I can absolutely understand that sense of, wow, we had to suck it up there, but I think we got somewhere.
That's Donald Trump's default position, isn't it? That he tries to steal the show, whether it's Zelensky, whether it's Starmer, whether it's any other, frankly, head of state or prime minister. It's all about Donald Trump. And that should sound alarm bells. That's not how diplomacy should work.
He is the most phenomenal, extraordinary communicator. I think, you know, there is just this element of unpredictability. It's not some boring press conference that you would get with cardboard cutout politicians.
In the first term, everybody was fighting me. In this term, everybody wants to be my friend.
There is an authenticity about it, but also an element of danger.
In a recent poll, more than 3/4 of British people said they have an unfavourable view of President Trump. But he's the only president in recent times to have roots in the UK and own land here. He's brought some benefits to the local economy.
You know, I think you've got to treat him with respect in some ways for who he is. And I think the UK needs to entertain him in some degree. The last thing we want to do is fall out with him.
Donald Trump has reinvigorated the famous old Turnberry golf course, and he's built a new one near Aberdeen in honour of his Scottish mother. But not everyone buys into the claim he's good for Scotland.
He's brought less money than he said he was going to bring. Trusting Donald Trump is not sensible politics. You know, this is someone who threatens economic instability, chaos, as well as environmental instability. It's pretty demeaning for the leader of the UK government to treat Donald Trump as though he's his best friend.
This is the latest version of the so-called special relationship between the UK and the US, a phrase coined by Winston Churchill when the UK stood taller in world affairs.
This means a special relationship between the British Commonwealth and Empire and the United States of America.
The foundation stone of the special relationship, and it is genuinely special, is the defence, security and intelligence relationship. And I genuinely believe that in those areas, the UK and the US are closer than any other two countries on the planet. It tends to be defined by the relationship between Number 10 and the White House. And to be frank, that goes up and down. For every Thatcher and Reagan, or Blair and Clinton, or Blair and Bush, there are relationships like the edgy one between Lyndon B. Johnson and Harold Wilson over Wilson's refusal to send British forces into Vietnam. Heath and Nixon never really connected. I think it's good for both countries. It's also good for global stability.
But stability isn't a word people use to describe Donald Trump.
Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt.
He's made bizarre statements, ripped up the rules of diplomacy. Nothing, it seems, is off the table.
Why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada? They should be a state.
Peaceful protest! Peaceful protest!
In the eyes of most Labour supporters, there's an authoritarian edge to what's happening in America, quite at odds with their own party's values. The president has sent in the National Guard to clear homeless people from the streets of Washington, scrapped diversity and climate change agreements, authorized mass deportations of migrants. And he still hasn't accepted that he lost the 2020 US election.
We need to remember as well that the test of someone's commitment to democracy is not whether they're capable of winning an election, it's whether they accept the result when they lose. Donald Trump didn't and still doesn't.
The government has publicly ignored some of the president's most controversial moves, in the interest of the special relationship, it seems. I went to visit David Lammy while he was still Foreign Secretary at his official residence, Chevening.
Hello. Shall we sit down? We know you've had a lot of important guests here very recently as well.
He once called Trump a neo-Nazi. But then his house guest who'd just left, Vice President J.D. Vance, once said something similar. Labour volunteers supported the Democrats in the 2024 US election. But David Lammy told the Prime Minister the Republicans were running a better campaign.
I advised him that I thought that Trump was likely to win, and therefore it was important that we both built relationships in opposition, but we were quick to foster those relationships when we won, and we were absolutely laser-focused, hyper-focused, that we would forge good relationships with a change in administration.
You notably called him a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath. Surely that's awkward for you with that background.
Look, Donald Trump is a huge figure. I think the Vice President has had some pretty strong things to say about him. I think he's pretty focused on the now and on the future. He's a relational individual. It mattered that in opposition we were reaching out to the Trump administration. And it mattered to him greatly that Keir Starmer picked up the phone after the attempted assassination and sent his best wishes. Things like that matter, I think, to this president.
The government's courtship of the president has softened the blow on tariffs. At 10%, the UK's rate is lower than the EU and many other countries.
You got it done, so I want to congratulate you on that.
When Donald Trump won the election and set about his perspective on tariffs, again, people said this would tank the UK economy. We were the first country to pull off an economic prosperity deal, the first country to get a trade deal, and we are in a much better place than we would have been had we not had that special relationship and had we not lent in. Of course, there are going to be areas on which we disagree, but in the end, all foreign policy, all diplomacy is relational. It requires effort. We pulled it off.
But the details of the trade deal are still being worked out.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for your hospitality.
And there's a tariff of 25% on steel, impacting UK industry.
Thank you very much. What a beautiful accent.
Well, it'll be a success if we find out how it works in practice. And I do think it's always good to have a bit of an eye to the small print when it comes to dealings with Donald Trump.
So far, so good, but the question is at what price? Will Britain pay a price with its European partners to the, as it sort of tries to manage its relationship with Donald Trump? That's always been the question. Can it have it both ways?
Take the trade deal that we're supposed to have, the UK with the United States, not been signed, no formal deal there. There's a general understanding, but the truth is Donald Trump could change his mind on that. And that's the problem when you have someone like Donald Trump, who is so untrustworthy, so unreliable, so unpredictable.
But those in the Trump camp see method where others see madness.
I've worked for a number of presidents. I've been in the White House Situation Room with 4 presidents going back to President Nixon. And President Trump is a very different person. What he says in private is exactly what he says in public. For many people on the outside, it looks very sort of spontaneous or sporadic, or he's jumping from this to that. No, he's got an end goal in mind.
Sir Kim Darroch was Britain's ambassador to Washington during Donald Trump's first term.
Hi, Mr. President. Something's going well. He is massively charismatic. He dominates the room. His officials always seemed extraordinarily deferential to him, even frightened of him.
You famously fell foul of President Trump. You wrote that you felt he was inept and insecure in a letter that was leaked, and you had to go. That tells you something about Trump's character, doesn't it?
Well, he doesn't respond well to criticism. Everyone seems to have learned the lesson that if you have differences, if you have challenges, you talk about them in private, but you don't criticize him in public because he is, to be frank, he's thin-skinned and he always reacts. He never lets a challenge or an insult go unanswered.
It's a lesson India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, learned to his cost.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to have Prime Minister Modi of India. He is a great friend of mine for a long time. We've had a wonderful relationship.
India's tariff was set at a steep 25% after Modi challenged the president's claim he'd achieved peace between India and Pakistan. Then it doubled to 50% when Modi continued to buy Russian oil. Jeremy Hunt saw firsthand how the president gets his own way.
I first met Trump at the NATO summit in 2018 when he had this enormous showdown with Angela Merkel in which he castigated Germany for not spending enough on defence and very nearly pulled America out of NATO on the spot. It was a very, very hairy moment for the Western alliance. He absolutely had a point. Following that summit, I asked the Foreign Office to do some analysis. It was gobsmacking. It turns out that American taxpayers pay for between 1/3 and 1/2 of the cost of defending Europe. And that is, Trump or no Trump, totally unsustainable.
It was a different story when Donald Trump went back to NATO this year.
Daddy has to sometimes use strong language to
You have to
get
use
stuff.
strong language. Every once in a while you have to use a certain word.
The members agreed to up their defence spending to 5% of GDP.
I think he is actually much more impressive than his caricature, who is willing to do big things and make big changes and take risks in a way that few others have the guts to do. It's true he is very transactional and very mercurial, and I think he has done damage to very long-standing relationships that America has with other countries around the world, because they now feel that they can't be sure of what America will do next.
There's still shock at Donald Trump's attack on President Zelensky in the White House in February.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
Well, we call it the special relationship, but in fact, it only really works when we do what President Trump wants. Isn't that the reality?
If you go back to the scenes in the Oval Office, on any analysis, that was a low point for diplomacy.
If you didn't have our military equipment,
You invited me to...
if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days.
Those images went across the world, and I think a lot of people were left very worried and nervous after that encounter. The following day, as a consequence of the UK Prime Minister picking up the phone to President Zelensky, he walks up number 10 to a warm embrace, and the world, the shoulders drop. There's a sigh of relief. And Keir Starmer worked with President Macron to keep the United States in the room. Not just that, but also a successful NATO. That is the importance of the special relationship.
Hello, everybody.
Keir Starmer was a key player in getting Volodymyr Zelensky back to the White House last month, with other European leaders providing strength in numbers. The mood was very different, but an end to the war in Ukraine seems as far away as ever.
We'll only know in the years ahead whether Starmer's approach has worked. Clearly too early to tell, but I think his strategy may ultimately fail.
You mean by getting too close to Donald Trump?
Yeah, and I think unless you show to Donald Trump that you have alternatives, you have plenty of friends, and we are strong together, then I think Donald Trump will continue to be the bully that we've got to know.
There's criticism here in the UK of the Prime Minister because some people feel he shouldn't be getting too close to him.
You know, I've heard that criticism, Jane, and I'm just amazed by it, because why should Britain not take advantage of the fact that you have an American president who has a predisposition to loving Great Britain?
There are moments that can jar, but in the end, this is a relationship, and a relationship you don't get to choose who got elected at the other end of it. You do have to know where your stop point is, but if you just say, well, all in all, you're just sucking up to Trump, I would say to those people, give me your plan then for the UK.
Despite the apparent warmth of the special relationship between Trump and Starmer, there are areas of fundamental disagreement. Gaza and Israel is one. Donald Trump has described Israel's leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, as a war hero. He's continued to sell him arms and speculated about moving Palestinians out of Gaza altogether.
The Americans have been the police force of the world, and they're acting in a way which is morally corrupt. And it is so shaming to think that our politicians buy into that narrative and do nothing.
People here are protesting against the government's banning of the Palestine Action Group under terrorism laws.
The police are moving in now to arrest people at the heart of the demonstration.
What's happening?
Well, I've just been arrested for holding up a banner that said I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action, and I think it's a question of freedom of expression. I think that's why I've been arrested.
Thank you.
The UK's taken its own decisions on the Middle East, without much blowback yet from President Trump. Next week, the Starmer government is due to recognise a Palestinian state. It's been a difficult balancing act, risking antagonising the world's most powerful man.
I think that the Prime Minister just has an ability to really suffer a president that, at times is just insufferable on any number of issues. Keir Starmer seems to choose his moments where he makes it very clear that certain situations are intolerable. And I think he managed to do this very carefully on the question of Gaza. And then Donald Trump, of course, stands up and sort of follows suit almost.
We've had the opportunity to talk about the situation in Gaza and the intolerable situation, including images of starvation.
That's real starvation stuff. I see it, and you can't fake that.
Well, it's classic Trump, isn't it? He'll say that he's sympathetic and isn't it awful? And then he will fail to take any measures to tackle it. The truth is that the President of the United States could pick up the phone to Netanyahu and change the Israeli government's position on this today. Crocodile tears shouldn't impress anybody.
Ed Davey has now said he will boycott the state banquet in protest at Trump and Starmer's handling of the Gaza crisis.
Was Keir Starmer able to influence Donald Trump on the whole question of Gaza and the hunger, starvation problem there?
It remains a matter of deep regret and frustration for me personally that we have not brought the horrendous, horrific war in Gaza to an end. The Prime Minister, of course, is raising these issues with Donald Trump. We have made a decision on Palestinian recognition. The US is in a different place. And I sat in this room with J.D. Vance, and he made that clear. Nevertheless, we're able to have a barbecue, we're able to go fishing, our families are able to come together, we're able to get on and to disagree agreeably.
What about Trump looking to his legacy? Should President Trump get the Nobel Peace Prize?
Oh, look, I can't answer that. I mean, in this job, foreign policy is moving so fast.
Despite agreeing to disagree on some things, there's one issue where the Prime Minister is under pressure to learn lessons from Donald Trump. In the US, the White House has launched a crackdown on illegal immigration. Almost 200,000 people deported already after their legal status was revoked. In the UK, there have been widespread protests against housing asylum seekers in hotels and calls for Keir Starmer to take tougher action.
It's for England being England, that's what we're here for.
A Friday evening in Turnford, Hertfordshire, one of dozens of demonstrations across the UK.
Black people being unvetted, coming into the country, we don't know who we're putting up. We're putting them in five-star hotels, some places, it's ridiculous.
You don't know who they are, you don't know what their criminal records are, you don't know who you're dealing with.
What about President Trump's view and the way he's handling the situation?
I personally welcome President Trump to come over here and sort this country out.
Get Nigel.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage has his own special relationship with the president, and the Reform UK leader says he's prepared to deport 600,000 migrants if he's elected.
He likes Farage, he likes the politics. He is really seized on the anti-immigrant agenda. He wants Europeans to seize on it. He is anti-free trade. He's anti many things that have been the bedrock of the liberal establishment for decades now. So I think that it won't go away, his desire to see the right, the populist right, come to more power in the UK.
We're beginning to see a wave that is crossing the Atlantic from the east coast of America, where Donald Trump has got off to the most amazing start. And I hope and believe that many things that will happen in America will serve as an inspiration to us.
Under pressure from the right, statements by Downing Street have become noticeably more strident. particularly on social media.
There is certainly a tendency to the Trumpification of political language, I think in the UK and not only in the UK. And you notice it particularly perhaps about things like immigration. Donald Trump has managed to cut through with language, whereas a lot of politicians had stopped cutting through to people.
You know, is he echoing Donald Trump, or is he coming to the same conclusions that Donald Trump has come to? The illegal immigration issue in the United States was one of the reasons President Trump was elected both times.
If the government is starting to sound like Donald Trump on immigration, it seems it's deliberate.
This isn't language that British prime ministers would normally use. And is he coming under the sway of Donald Trump sometimes?
All over the Western world, elections are being fought on two issues: cost of living in the economy and migration, and particularly irregular migration. That is the number one issue. Governments that are winning in those elections have answers to those issues. Now, they can be progressive parties like my own, or they can be more conservative parties like the Republicans.
As Donald Trump prepares to fly back to the UK for a rare second state visit, Keir Starmer can claim the special relationship is flourishing. But soon, difficult decisions will have to be made. Not least the question of Ukraine giving up land to Putin for peace.
Right now, the risk that we have in the world is that if Putin gets any kind of win in Ukraine, the question is what will come next. And we understand that in Europe. Trump is beginning to understand that. I hope this state visit will take us further down that road.
Last week, the Prime Minister sacked Peter Mandelson, his ambassador to the US, over his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Keir Starmer will be hoping the state visit passes off without further disruption.
I think the vast majority of the British public are pretty wary of Donald Trump. They're worried about the impact of Donald Trump on our security and defence and on our economy and trade. I think Trump is a wake-up call to those who've said the special relationship will endure. The special relationship is being tested like never before.
We believe in the special relationship, not just that, you know, we like to play golf in Britain and Britons like to come to Disneyland. It's the fact that we have economic relationships, we have military relationships, and we have this long shared history. And I think that the prospect of that being even strengthened in Trump's second term is there.
The special relationship probably has a lot of history that it's riding on, and a current threat environment that is, you know, on the side of the US and the UK staying in it together.
Can Keir Starmer trust Donald Trump?
No. I don't think trust is the basis for the relationship.
So what future for the special relationship?
I think it depends on what Britain's willing to tolerate.
Under Donald Trump?
Under Donald Trump. Do they have an alternative?
With a night in Windsor Castle and a banquet in his honour, the UK could hardly do more to please President Trump. But when the ceremonials are over, there will still be tough challenges ahead for the special relationship.